All right, there we go. Welcome, everybody. I was able to make it even more spooky today. Ah, man, I something happened with my what's it called? Um, uh, my camera, and just looks a little off now. I don't know why that happened or how that happened, but yeah. Nope. I don't know what happened. It got a little messed up. I think that's better. Anyways, it'll be good enough. Good enough. A great motto for painting and art. So before I actually start painting today, I'm going to do a quick thing here. This is the Nicholas Uribe portrait I did. Um, I am just going to what's it called? Varnish it real quick. So let me switch to the face cam. There we go. All right. So yeah, this is the Nicholas Uribe painting. Uh, it's all red, but you can't really tell that in this light. But yeah, it's all red. So I'm just going to varnish it. I already varnished it once, but some of it didn't take. So I'll just do that again real quick, and I'll get to painting. But I think it's a good opportunity because I can talk about varnishing a little bit. If anybody isn't familiar with the process or anything, or wants advice, not that I'm an expert, but I've gotten into it a little bit. Um, but yeah, I use Gamvar because you can put it on a lot sooner than other varnishes. Um, but it's not a perfect varnish because it's not. It doesn't protect against UV light. So it's good for like protecting the surface from dust and stuff, but yeah, it's not a good surface. It's not good for like UV light protection. Ideally, I would use Gamvar, varnish it with Gamvar, and then in a couple of years, take the Gamvar off and put on a UV protective varnish. Although I can't recommend a brand on that because I don't know which one would be good for that, honestly. But putting on Gamvar is super easy. Um, I'm using a foam brush, but you can use a regular brush, and you can put it in a little thing and dip it, or some people do the pour over. I just pour some into my brush and then put it on. Because Gamvar has some solvent in it, you don't need to actually um, you don't need to. My understanding is you don't need to actually wash the brush. Just let the Gamvar dry on the brush. When you go to use it again, the Gamvar will reactivate on the brush because it has solvent in it. And so yeah. Having said that, I'm using a what's it called? A sponge brush. So they're really cheap. So even if I ruin it, I'm not afraid of, I'm not afraid of ruining it, basically. And then it's just, pretty self-explanatory after that. It's just brush some on, make sure you coat everything. Yeah, I don't know. That's about it. I will say this, some paint, will give you trouble. I've had this where the Gamvar like beads up on it and doesn't cover it. I've heard a few solutions for that. One is to just do it repeatedly until it covers it. The other is to brush it on and then wait a little bit. And when it starts to tack up a little, brush over the areas that it's beating up on. Yeah, that's it. Real quick, real easy. Gamvar does have Gamvar does have some Gamsol in it, so you do need to worry about ventilation and fumes, even though you can't smell it. Having said that, this is a very small painting, relatively speaking, and I'm just doing one painting, and I do keep the door open, so I'm fairly confident that the fumes it's not going to be a problem. But it's worth mentioning. Especially if you do a lot, especially if you pour a lot out, because that's how the stuff evaporates. And I didn't do any of that. Like I pour it straight into the thing, straight onto the brush and so on. So yeah. But it's worth mentioning because, safety first, I guess. Sorry, I have this little thing covering my camera to help with the glare. All right. There we go. All right, so last stream, I messed up a lot on this painting and like really took it and just messed up. Yeah, it happens sometimes. I think I wasn't feeling the best in the world and just, like I said, just messed it up. And it's not a big deal. It sucks because it's just time, wasted. Although I was having a really good time talking to people yesterday, so I really don't mind. But yeah, today it's going to be repairs and then hopefully finishing it. Although realistically, not finishing it, but still, repairs are going to be made. I knew that something was wrong and I couldn't put my finger on it. And that's the problem with streaming painting, because when I'm working on it by myself, I can step away more, I can take a break, come back. I feel more comfortable, taking a photo of it and doing all, stuff like that. Like I feel more obviously more comfortable doing a lot of things like that instead of just headstrong keep going, which is a mistake sometimes. So, not the biggest deal in the world. But yeah, just worth mentioning. So the way I'm checking this is one of the easiest ways is I took a photo of it, I put it into Photoshop, overlay the reference, and I can see all the mistakes I was making. And I can see why some of them I can even see why I was making them. Like I know, like I, so when I first started painting this, I messed up on her chin, jaw area. So I corrected that, but then I overcorrected and I couldn't get the correction that I'd made out of my head. So I kept overcorrecting. So yeah. So yeah, I put it in, like I said, I put it into Photoshop. And now I'm just comparing the two. I have a trick for Photoshop. I don't know how you could do this with other programs. I'm sure you can. Every program is going to have a different way of doing this, so to speak. But Photoshop has a filter called I think it's called glowing edges or neon edges or something like that. I have no idea why anyone would ever use this filter under normal circumstances. And I have never used this filter under any other circumstances. But it's very convenient for painting because what I do is I run that filter on my reference image, and then I put it on top of my painting, and I can see all the edges of everything, and I don't have to do that like faded faded option where you like put the painting or the image at like 50% and try, or like constantly hit the button to like switch between the two. So it's really convenient. It's a great filter for that. Not perfect though. It's still sometimes hard to see uh, what is what, and it does add width to the adds width to the like edges. So you have to be careful of that too. The thing is too, when when I go back to painting, I don't want to have this layer on top of my painting. I don't want to see my painting in the reference. I just want to see the reference. So I like to go through it, mark all the points that I need to, edit, and then jump back to the reference, because I want to be able to see the reference, see the, all the colors, all of that. I don't want to be looking at my painting and doing it that way. And sometimes you need to flip back and forth, but yeah. There's also an app that can do something similar. It lets you use your phone to overlay an image on the camera, so you can like overlay your reference on top of your drawing or your painting. It's okay. If you have a tripod, it's a lot better. If you mount it on a tripod and don't move it, get it set up right. It's a little finicky. It's definitely not perfect, but could be useful if anyone goes to like what's it called? If any of you go to like Sky's top portrait artist of the year or something like that, like yeah, go for it. I say this not every time I stream, but I do mention this, that while I am using this, what's it called? This technique, and it is extremely convenient, and I think it's a great tool for anybody who's working on anything really. It does promote or develop bad habits, and it can be a crutch if you don't have, if you've never and don't keep developing your ability to draw without and paint without it. Especially if you don't develop it to begin with, because I feel like you can always, kind of get back to it a bit. But if you never developed it to begin with, yeah, it's not good. Also, for people who aren't familiar with it, tracing is great for to learn. It's a great way of learning different aspects of art. It just depends, just depends what, but like there's a lot of things in art that you can learn from tracing. You can learn drawing, you can learn, the face, the body, you can learn painting, like a ton of things. It's very useful. But you're not going to be able to always trace. But the other thing is, just because you can trace doesn't mean you're good at tracing, which I know sounds kind of funny, but there's a huge difference between an inexperienced artist tracing and an experienced artist or illustrator tracing. I've seen that firsthand. It's a huge difference. So I know there's all these jokes about like, oh, tracers or I think a lot of it started from comics and inking and all that, and inkers being tracers and whatever jokes. Jokes are jokes. That's fine. But having said that, Yeah, there is a huge difference between someone with a lot of experience and skill and someone without it. So that's why I say like it's worth developing those skills in the beginning and not developing that crutch early on. So yeah, the eyes I messed up a lot with. So what happened was, and this happens to me a lot, I could tell that something was wrong. And I've said this many times on stream already. Um, I attributed it to the wrong thing. And so I tried to adjust the eyes, thinking, I'd gotten it somewhat wrong, which I didn't. And then I adjusted them and then I did, so. So yeah, as far as the color that I'm using at the moment, this is purely because it's something I can generally see on top of any of most things. Not everything, but most. And it's not phthalo blue. Because, oh my god, phthalo blue is the wrong color to use for a draw over like this, in my opinion. It's just too strong, and they'll just um anything I go and paint over this when I try and cover it or mix into it, it'll just it'll start tinting everything, and I don't want that. Also, warm colors generally, you know, more pleasing on people. So yeah, that's about it. this is one thing I do love about oils in comparison to um, other mediums, with the exception of digital. And honestly, I guess this also applies in a way to gouache, although not entirely. I can explain why later. But I love that, like, I can go in and rework this. If I make a mistake, if I need to adjust something, it's fine. It's not a big deal. And I feel like that takes the pressure off. I can see that being a detriment to some people, especially people who are maybe indecisive and who, you know, have that issue. Like maybe that's a different issue to deal with. But yeah, being able to come back and fix mistakes as you see them, I think, is a good thing. And the reason I don't apply this to gouache as much is because you you can re-wet gouache and wipe it off. You can cover depending. Also, if it's acrylic gouache, then you can cover more than you can. You can't re-wet it, so you have to cover it. But gouache, the big problem I have with gouache is color matching. It is so hard to match colors in gouache once it's dry. Because in gouache, there's a lot of color shift that happens when the paint dries. And that makes color matching an absolute nightmare. I heard from James Gurney that if you use it long enough, you kind of get an eye for it, and you kind of know how it how it shifts, and so you can compensate for that. And I've heard that from acrylic painters as well, because acrylic does the same thing. But yeah, I don't know. I can't. I haven't used it enough then, because I can't. So her ears look a little funny, um, because she has these scars and stuff from the makeup, like running around her ear area. Like there's a scar right here and one right here. I think they wanted to keep the scars off of her face in the movie. So they're very minimal on her face versus, Frankenstein or the monster Frankenstein. I don't think they didn't mind making him grotesque. I think ears are very interesting. I think they have very interesting shape to them. I've heard this before from my teacher and other people that people sometimes because of the shape of ears, people will sometimes focus on them too much, and therefore they'll end up enlarging them too much. So something to be aware of. Because they're so detailed, sometimes this actually goes to anything that's detailed that you put a lot of importance to and hyper focus on. There's a tendency to enlarge it if it's hard to draw it or paint it at the size that it's at. So, definitely something to keep in the back of your mind as you're working on things, or something that I like to keep in the back of my mind, I should say. It's like you do whatever you want. But personally, I like to keep that in the back of my mind. Try and remember that so that I don't do that. One of the things I really like doing for ears is actually, what's it called? Doing them, like, I'll indicate where they are and kind of paint them in, but I like putting them in with just a few brush strokes and not really doing all the detail and all the little bits and everything. But you can't always do that, obviously. I like it when I can. All right. Anyone who's new to oil paints, and there's so much to learn. But one thing is, one of the reasons that they teach dark to light. Well, there's a few reasons they teach that you paint dark to light, is because the light colors are generally more opaque than the dark colors, and you usually build up thickness as you go, and that thickness adds to the impasto. Adds to the feeling of things coming closer, and usually the warm things come closer and the cool things recede. It's not 100%, but that's a general rule. So that is why they recommend, or they teach, or it's usually taught words. But yeah, that's usually why it's light, dark to light. Having said that, there are some dark colors, or some what's it called? Some blacks that are actually very opaque. It's just not the majority. Like my red and my blue here are both either transparent or semi-transparent. I forget which. But my yellow is pretty opaque. And yellow, not always or usually thought of as an opaque color. And honestly, a lot of the yellow pigments aren't, but this one is. Let me just check something real quick. Okay. Just checking. There's always a bunch of little things to keep an eye on when I'm streaming. When using the background color to carve back into the character and define the shape of the character and everything, it is important to keep in mind the marks that you're making and how that will look in the final piece. Personally, and I know I've said this on stream before, but personally, I really don't like that look where you can see like a halo where the background paint was painted around the character, like I'm doing right now. Because if I just left it like this, like you see these, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but in person, you see these marks and it looks weird. Is this in focus? I did focus it before, but sometimes it adjusts and loses it. Yeah. So yeah. So I'm aware of that and I'll go in and try and, paint over and adjust so that I don't have that. If you want that, that's fine. It's just, you know, you want to just be aware of it and make it a choice versus something that happens because you weren't paying attention to it. Which I think is an important distinction in art. There's so many rules in art, and there's so many of them that you can break. Um, but you know, you want it to be by choice and not because you're not paying attention or, God forbid, lack of ability or skill or something like that. Although there's always going to be a lack of skill and ability to a degree because you're always less capable than you want to be. So I recently started using Business Yellow instead of CAD Lemon. And I'll be honest, I don't notice much difference between them. That's not a bad thing. Actually, it could be considered a very good thing because I could, you substitute bismuth instead of CAD lemon, which is, CAD's more toxic than bismuth. Having said that, I think CAD lemon's actually cheaper than bismuth yellow. It's one of the few paints that's not a CAD, but it's actually more expensive. I'm sure there are others. I'm thinking of like the basics right now. So I moved the mic, different location, see if there's any difference. I don't think I like it there though. So I will probably be moving it again. I wonder if I should just get one of those, I don't know what they're called. No, wait, I do know what they're called. Lapel mic? No, lavalier mic. I think that's what it is. The little ones that you wear, you know. I was just worried that there'd be a lot of rustling with my movement. My yellow looks like it's trying to make a break for it. The reason my palette has these little tape shelves on it is exactly because of that. Like when it tries to, some paints try and run down. Which I suppose is understandable given that this is basically a 90-degree angle. So one of the reasons I keep mixing white in is to lighten it, but you might hear from people not to use white to lighten things. And there's some logic to that, because when you add white, it adds it's a color just like any other, so it adds elements. So, if you have a red, it can turn it into a pink. If you have a you know, slightly warmer red, it could turn it into an orange, and so on. When really what you want is like lighter red. Um, so there is a reason for that. But in my case, I'm also trying to often tone down my color just a little and lighten it up. So, because I don't want our skin to be like super orange. So adding a little bit of white, sometimes black and white, so gray, we'll get that. Yeah, you can use complementary colors too to tone things down. Um, you just got to feel for it, like what works best after using all options for a while. I am so curious what the back of this paper is going to look like when I'm done with it. I wonder if any of the oil is soaked through or not. It's not supposed to, but it also didn't say that it was a very thirsty or absorbent surface. I even looked up reviews. But yeah. So one of the things I wish I had done earlier in earlier passes on this is I wish I had drawn in the some of the lip definitions. Now, the reason I didn't was because honestly, at the time, I couldn't see much of it. When I was zoomed out, I could not see any of it. And so I just painted the lips in as one big mess, which is often the right way of going about it. But I think that after doing that, putting in some of the definition, even just the divide, personally could help me from from everything migrating so much as I went through it. I might be a little wrong about the bismuth and CAD. Bismuth, I'm thinking, seems like it has a little more white in it. It's the same brightness, but maybe it's missing just a tad of that chroma. Maybe. Might also vary from brand to brand a bit. Yeah, the scars are kind of weird on her. They're not super prominent to the point where if I didn't know she was, Bride of Frankenstein, I would assume it was just some hairs that happened to be like sticking to her. I know I said this before, but like this paper, it feels like it's eating the paint. Like I put it down and it's just gone. Like almost as if I didn't even put anything down. And to like overcome that, I feel like I have to swing, push the paint, the color a lot further than I want it, or the color or the contrast. And so I feel like it, makes me swing from one side to the other in a way that is not good for painting. I just discovered a new YouTube channel on painting today. And by discovered, I mean it's one that I was unfamiliar with, which, I'm not saying I didn't think there would be any YouTube channels on painting that I wasn't familiar with, but like, I don't think I've ever seen a single video of hers, which was surprising. And from the little I watched so far, it seems like she has really good info. So as soon as I actually watch some more, I will be happy to share that, with people. I don't want to like, promote someone right now before I've had a chance to actually watch through, like fully watch through some of their videos. I will say this: if anyone's watching this after the fact or anytime, basically, and I will say one thing not to learn from me is my palette organization. This part's fine. It's the mixing where I am not very disciplined or organized in it. So some people are. I'm not. I am not amongst them. So one thing you might see me right now, kind of going over, like painting over a place and then going right over the same brush stroke I just did. Normally, I don't recommend doing that. Not saying never, obviously. There are instances where that's, you know, if you want to soften the brush stroke, like there are reasons to do it. But that is a bad habit that a lot of people have. which is needlessly repeating brushstrokes. However, right now, what the problem I'm running into is my canvas is a mix between wet, dry, somewhat dry, and horrible paper. And that combination, sometimes I go over it to I'm trying to get rid of some of that dry brush marks. I'm not 100% going to get rid of it. It's okay. It's not like there's something bad about that. But that's why I keep repeating some areas. Like on the exact same stroke. Like I'll make a stroke and then I'll just do it again. It's because I'm trying to like soften up those dry brush marks that I've been getting. Also, there's something that does happen also in wet paint that sometimes you can put a mark down because everything's wet, you'll end up taking paint off. But if you change the angle and you change the pressure and everything, you can then deposit the paint back. Stretch time. I have been slacking on my physical therapy exercises lately. I need to get back into that. Oh, interesting. There might have been a hiccup in my stream. It said it disconnected and then reconnected. Uh, okay then. It was instantly, so there was like nothing for me to do about it. Hopefully, it's not too bad. place that I probably need to focus the most now is her face. YouTube doesn't like me being quiet while I paint. Keeps warning me that there's no audio coming, not receiving any audio. Unfortunately, at the moment, no one's in chat. Today might have been a bad day to stream, given that it's Halloween tomorrow. I think a lot of kids are trick or treating. I don't know. Mondays seem kind of slow anyway, so maybe Mondays are bad days to stream in general, but they're slow for me at work usually, so that was the thinking behind it. Well, it's so interesting. Normally, um, when you're painting or drawing eyes, uh, the top lid and top eyelid usually casts a bit of a shadow on the eyeball and part of it. Because this is so underlit, uh, it's the opposite this time, which is throwing me off a little bit. Which is why it's really good to do stuff like this. Also, it's worth mentioning that the white of your eye is usually not as white and not as light as you think it is. Yeah, I messed something up here, but it's all right. I'll figure it out. By messed up, I mean I'm referring to when I did the corrections today. That looks right. All right, friends, we're getting close to the 2-hour mark, which is probably where I'm going to be calling it a night. Wish I wasn't as tired as I was. Unfortunately, I am. It's so weird. I almost never get glare, but on this paper, ton of it. All right, folks, I'm going to be calling it a night. Thank you, everyone who stopped by and watched. I appreciate it, and thank you anyone watching this after the fact. I also appreciate it. If you have any questions, you can always put them in the comments on the YouTube video. If you want to chat live, stop by live, participate in the chat. It's always welcome. Yeah. I will be painting Wednesday night, same time. So come on by. Anyways, have a good night, everyone.